I'm Meghna Kshirsagar, and today I'm going to I'll talk about a multitask learning method for predicting host pathogen protein interactions. This is joint work with my advisors Jaime Carbonell and Judith Klein Sitaraman. Judith said she would be in the audience. I'm not sure if she's here. Okay, all right. So, in the previous talk, I'm sure you were motivated how important research on infectious diseases is. This talk is also about infectious diseases, in particular about how host pathogen protein interactions are important and how we can build better models for predicting them. So, in this cartoon here on the right, we can see several hosts and pathogens that infect these hosts. In some cases, there are multiple hosts that are infected by a single pathogen. For example, Salmonella typhi here infects mammals and plants as well. These pathogens target the host cells, and their goal is to acquire the nutrients and evade the host immune cell responses. If you consider the specific case where we have one host which is targeted by several pathogens, then despite the fact that these microbiological species are very different, despite the fact that in general microbiological world is very diverse, there can be many pathogens which have very similar properties and which follow similar strategies to attack their hosts. So, while a lot of conventional work on host pathogen protein interaction prediction has focused on just one host and one pathogen, this work will try to combine information across several pathogens in building better models. In particular, our goal is in this work is to find similarities in the interactions of various pathogens with a host, and then we are going to use this notion of similarity in order to build a better model for host pathogen protein interaction prediction. So the outline is going to be the same. I'll first talk a bit about a similarity metric, then a multitask learning based method that uses this similarity, and finally results and analysis. Before we go into details, we'll take a brief detour into the background of protein interaction prediction. So biochemical methods such as co-immunoprecipitation, NMR, etc. are used to verify at the molecular level whether two given proteins interact with each other or not. Now the big challenges that these biochemical methods face is that they are very expensive and time consuming, and more so because the set of all possible interactions is very large. In this example, if you have human as a host and Bacillus anthracis as the pathogen, the potential number of protein pairs that you would have to validate are about 60 million, which is a very large number. And computational methods help here by developing statistical and algorithmic procedures which use some known interactions that we obtain from biochemical methods, and then they build predictive models using them. Now the challenge for computational methods is that often for an organism of your interest, you might not have enough interactions data, and in some cases none at all. Now I'd like to present a brief outline of how some of the machine learning based approaches work. They use the known interactions from databases like Firebase, Fisto, VirusMint, etc. The known interactions are used as training data. So you derive features on this training data for every protein pair, and you use properties of proteins such as protein sequence, protein domain, family, etc. This will be your X, that is the data, and the label Y can either be 1 to indicate interact or 0 to indicate not interact. And people have used different types of machine learning techniques like support vector machines and logistic regression, etc. for this problem. I'd like to talk a bit about one database called Fisto to give you an idea of what host pathogen interactions data looks like today. So here I have a bunch of pathogens from this database Fisto, and I have constructed a phylogenetic tree using the DNA sequences of these pathogens. And on the right, we have a histogram that shows for every pathogen here the total number of interactions that are there in this database across all hosts. For example, E. coli strain O15 has about 10 interactions, 10 interactions across all hosts. Now, the thing to note here is that while there are some pathogens which have very little data, overall the host pathogen interactions data is, it is a lot. It's very wide, and there are several pathogens here which can be very similar to each other. In our work, we use 3 of these data sets. All 3 are high throughput data sets, and they come pretty much from one experimental study. And in addition, we use another data set from our collaborators, which is the Salmonella typhi human protein interaction data set. This has only 62 interactions, and it comes from small scale experiments, whereas these have about a few thousands of interactions. And the other thing to note is all these pathogens we consider in our work are bacterial species. So, and then we are going to use a multitask learning based method, which is a paradigm in machine learning, which essentially uses, considers one of these pathogen interaction data sets as one task. We'll go into details of this in the coming few slides. So the first part of the talk will define a notion of similarity across these host pathogen interaction data sets. For this, we first tried an interlog-based similarity. The concept of interlog is illustrated in this diagram here. So H and B are host and bacterial proteins that interact in this one data set, and H dash and B dash interact in this other data set. And these 2 pairs are related by this homolog relationship. Surprisingly, we found that there are only that the maximum number of interlogs that we find across any 2 data sets is just 3. So this seems to suggest that because there is not much interlog similarity in the data sets, if we define a similarity measure using this homolog or interlog, then it may not be very reliable. This leads us to the next data analysis that we did, where we looked at the pathways that are common across these host pathogen interaction data sets. So this graph here shows for each of the data sets the set of human pathways that were enriched in the interactions from that data. So the way we obtain this is we take all the human proteins targeted by the pathogen proteins in this data set, and then we do a pathway enrichment analysis using hypergeometric and Fisher's exact test. And the p-values here indicate the enrichment. The darker ones, regions, are the ones that are highly enriched. And yeah, on the y-axis we have the pathways, about 2,000 of them. These were taken from Reactome. So you can see here that across the various, across the 4 data sets, there is significant enrichment in similar pathways. So this leads us to the following biological hypothesis, which we call the commonality hypothesis. And the hypothesis says that pathogens tend to target similar biological pathways in their host. We found evidence for similar such hypothesis in some other published work as well. So now that we have a way to define similarity across the host pathogen data sets, we'll see how we can convert this to a mathematical form so that it can be used in our machine learning method. So consider a set of host pathogen interactions, say human and anthracis. And like I said before, one set of host pathogen interactions is called a task in our multitask learning framework. So let this be task 1. Now, if you count the number of times the different pathways were found in this set of interactions, you will get a histogram like this. So on the x-axis you will have all the pathways, and on the y-axis you would have the number of times that pathway was found in this set of interactions. Note that this histogram here is a very crude approximation to the idea of pathway enrichment that we saw on the previous slide. For our work, we are going to call this histogram as a summary, and for each task we would have a summary like this. So similarly, like we showed for B. anthracis here, we can obtain a similar summary for human Yersinia protein interactions, and let this be the summary of task T2. So based on our biological hypothesis, we want these summaries to be similar because we saw that similar pathways are enriched across the data sets. Mathematically, what this suggests is we want S of T1 to be similar to S of T2. So now we have a mathematical form for the commonality hypothesis, which was in the biological form on the previous slide. Based on this notion of similarity, we will now develop the multitask learning method, which we call pathway-based learning. I will present an animation to illustrate what we do. Say you have 3 tasks. Each task represents one host pathogen protein interaction dataset, and this is the training phase. The first step of the training consists of building pairwise models for every pair of tasks. So what I'll do is I'll take task 1 and task 2 and combine them in this pairwise learning step, and the output would be W1 and W2, where W1 is the set of parameters for task 1 and W2 is the set of parameters for task 2. So these can be the weights of the features in your model. Now similarly, we do pairwise learning for the other task combinations, and because we have 3 tasks here, we would have 3 pairwise combinations. Now this pairwise learning thing I have denoted by an operator, and I'm calling it pairwise learning here. We will discuss what exactly this operator does in the next few slides. Note that the weight vectors that are learned here from each pairwise learning are going to be different for each task. For example, for task T1, W1 is going to be different from this W1 here. That's because this W1 was learned in conjunction with another task, whereas this was from task 3. Okay, so this completes the training phase, and during testing, say you have a test example, a protein pair that you want to check, and this comes from task 1, then you would use whatever weight vectors you had learned in the previous step, that is W1 and W2, and you would apply them on this test example and get their predictions, and then you combine them like an ensemble using another operator here, the plus operator, which will combine this and assign a label. In our case, we are using a simple voting based method. So once you do this is an example for just task 1. A similar procedure is followed for the other tasks, and you have the labels at the end. So I'm going to talk about this part next, and please refer to the paper for the details of the voting. So mathematically, the pairwise learning operator consists of minimizing this following objective function, this loss function, and it consists of these terms. The first 2 terms are loss terms, and the next 2 are regularizer terms. The loss terms basically, their goal is to minimize the classification error on the training data that we have. This is a very standard thing across all classifiers that you have seen. And the contribution of this work is in this regularizer R, and this R is defined to be the difference between the summaries of the 2 tasks. So we call this R the pathway-based regularizer, and the reason we take a difference between the 2 summaries is because it incorporates this notion of pathway level similarity. So the summaries here, I had earlier shown you an example of how the histograms were obtained. And during learning, because you don't know the labels of the data, the weight vectors would be used in obtaining the summaries, not just counts. So this will become clearer if you read the paper. Okay, so expanding the objective function here, the 2 loss terms we use logistic loss. So this is just logistic loss on task 1 and logistic loss on task 2. 1 and 2 are actually S and T here. I'm sorry about the difference in notation. And then you have the pathway regularizer, which expands out to this. Each term here is the summary on that task. And then this is the standard L2 regularizer, which is just the L2 norm of the 2 weight vectors. we do this for shrinkage. Now, the bad news is that this huge function is a non-convex function, but we are saved by the fact that we can reduce this non-convex function to a difference of convex functions. And there exists a known technique for optimizing such functions, which is called the convex-concave procedure. This was first developed by UL and Rangarajan. So we optimize this loss function, and once we obtain the weight vectors W's, we do the voting and get the final predictions. Next, let's take a look at the results. So the techniques that we compare against are three strong baselines. One of them is the conventional non-multitask way of doing things, where you build one model for each task and you build it independently. The second baseline is an extension of this baseline, where you add additional pathway features. These features are derived using the same pathway information that we use for the multitask, except that there is no dependency involved here. I mean, we don't compare with other tasks. And this third one is a popular multitask learning model, which has been used in text and information retrieval. And here they compare the weight vectors, the W's, instead of comparing summaries like we do. To remind you a bit about the data sets we are using, the first three bacterial data sets come from high throughput experiments and have a large number of interactions, and the last one has few interactions. The effective number of interactions is reduced by the fact that for a lot of the protein pairs, we did not find all features. The effective size of the training data, including the negative class, is this. So basically, we sample 100 times as much random protein pairs to construct the negative data, because interactions are only the positive class. And this is the roughly the number of features that we had for each task. First, we predict the performance on the known interactions, and we do this using tenfold cross-validation. We evaluate the average F1, which is computed using precision and recall. And both of these are computed only on the positive class, because this is a high class imbalance scenario. We see that the performance, this is the performance on the independent models, and we see that the performance on the three high throughput data sets is much worse compared to the small scale data set. We feel that the reason for this is that high throughput data sets tend to be very noisy, and this data set is really small, and hence it will be easier to learn on, so which is why we tend to see a better performance. Coming to the next baseline, the independent with pathway features, we see that adding pathway features does not really improve the performance except for one task. This indicates that the pathway information by itself in its raw form does not have enough signal, and we have to incorporate this in the form of the multitask summary function, which we described to be useful. The third baseline, the mean multitask learning, again, that also performs slightly better on this one task, which seems to indicate that parameter level similarity for multitask learning in this problem is not going to be very useful. And finally, our method outperforms all the other methods by a maximum of 4 F points. We also did some statistical significance tests and found that for the 3 high throughput data sets, the p-values were much small. However, for the last data set, the p-value was not small enough, so which seems to indicate that the performance we see here is not really indicative that we are doing better. Then we also looked at area under the curve. So we computed the precision recall curves, and we found the area under the curve. This gives a better picture of what's happening. Here we only compared 2 of the techniques because independent models was the best technique, and MTPL is our technique. So you can see here that in the 3 high throughput cases, the area under the curve is better, as indicated even by these graphs here. Whereas for the 4th data set, our technique seems to perform worse than the independent models, except in this small region, and that's probably the reason why we see that in tenfold cross-validation, we are outperforming it. So the results that were presented here were obtained after combining the predictions from all the pairwise learning tasks. This table shows which task benefits from which other task the most. So if you are only combining 2 tasks instead of 4 tasks, then what would the performance be like? So here you can see that so for this pair of tasks, B. anthracis and Salmonella, the best performance is achieved by, I mean, both of them achieve a very good performance, which means that it's good to combine these 2 tasks. Whereas if you combine B. anthracis with tularensis, then the performance is not as good, which means that maybe this task is not helping this task as much. So the details of these results are in the paper. In interest of time, I'll skip them and we'll take a look at how we do on novel predictions. So for these results, we train on all the available interactions data we have, and then we predict on protein pairs where we do not know the label. And once we have the predictions, we do a pathway enrichment analysis like before. And these are the set of pathways that we found to be common across all the predictions that we obtained from the 4 data sets. So the interesting thing to note here is that all these pathways, I mean, we found some evidence or in some paper or the other for their being relevant to pathogenesis. In particular, 3 of these pathways, integrin alpha, I mean, these 3, we found that in the training data, they were enriched in only 1 or 2 data sets, whereas in the novel predictions, they are enriched in all 4, which seems to indicate that that using the pathway-based regularizer is causing the predictions to be such that they enrich common pathways. And finally, here we have a Venn diagrams which show the intersection in enriched pathways in known interactions, which is on the left. That is the training data without any model. And on the right, we have the pathways that were enriched in the predicted interactions. So we see that the overlap is quite large. However, there are also a lot of new pathways that are discovered in the novel predicted interactions. The advantages of our work are that the summary function that I showed you earlier, the S, that can encode even some other biological hypothesis. In this case, we showed a pathway-based hypothesis. We have another example in the paper where we encode a different hypothesis, which was actually referred to in the previous presentation. The hypothesis that pathogens target hub proteins in the host. So we also encoded that, and we found that the results were better than learning independent models. And the framework is also very general in the machine learning sense, because the different tasks can have different feature spaces, because we are not comparing W1 with W2. The size of W1 and W2 do not matter. So in one task, you may have gene expression features, and for the other, you may not have them. But you can still use this method. And lastly, it can also work with unlabeled data, because in the regularizer, the labels do not matter. If you look at the mathematical form of the regularizer, it only uses the W and not the actual label. In conclusion, we developed a novel method to combine information from across several host pathogen protein interaction data sets. We used cross-species information in the form of pathway-based similarity. And the method we developed obtained improvement in prediction performance. And our analysis also shows promising applications for this method in general. The code from this work is available at this URL, which is also there in the paper. These are the references. And I would like to thank ISCB for funding my travel to the conference, my graduate fellowship sponsors, the Salmonella Host Interactions Project Consortium, which is going to validate the predictions that come out of this model, and NIH and NSF. Thanks.